Commissioner Deutsch.
I have a couple of questions. Some of them may be almost like a scientific response, but where does the mandate come from for them to hook up? Is that county or is it state?
It's county, Commissioner. If I can clarify a couple of the issues, Florida statutes dictate mandatory connection for sewer. The county comp plan, our LDRs, are the ones that require the mandatory connection to water. You can take no action today, and mandatory connection applies. This is simply a clarification of the existing code. I want to make sure everybody realizes that without even doing this ordinance, mandatory connection applies for Little Gasparilla Island. So you had the gentleman who stood up and said if you're just restating existing requirements, then he had no objection. That's what you're doing. We're clarifying the code because the issue has been raised. It applies. It's been in effect for, as I said, 25, 30 years. In fact, back in 1999, there was the comp plan challenge dealt with mandatory connection. It was on this very issue. So by way of background also, if I may, Mr. Boyer had a staff-assisted rape case that some of you may remember. We had a hearing out in Tringali. My timing may be off because everything kind of blends together these days, but I want to say it was about 5 years ago. Because 2 years ago we turned it back over to PSC, so it must have been about 5 years ago. There was a staff-assisted rape case. There were individuals that came out that are connected to Mr. Boyer's system who said that they were having quality issues with the water. They had rusted out, some of their appliances were being rusted out, et cetera. In response to that, he made improvements to his system. And those improvements, in doing those improvements, he counts on connections for funding the improvements. That's what utilities do. So this is in response to that. I don't believe we heard from anybody here today who is actually connected, who is saying that the water quality is still bad. Oh, maybe you did. I don't know. But anyway, those are what those improvements were for. So you can take no action today. Mandatory connection is still going to apply. The fee issue that some of them are talking about, I have no information as to what the fees are, but that is not our issue. That is the PSC issue. PSC is regulating Little Gasparilla Island, and there is an ongoing rate case. So all of that is going to be addressed through the PSC.
I've got some more questions. And I'm not sure who answers this. Perhaps it's the individual homeowner. A public safety question. I have a whole bunch of questions on this, but public safety question. Who would maintain and be sure that the quality of the water and the people that have the cisterns, it maintains a potable quality that's acceptable by current health standards? Would that be the county? Would that be the individual homeowner? Who has the responsibility of doing that?
Commissioner, I believe it's the homeowner. I don't believe there's any regulatory agency that oversees that.
Okay, so it would be up to the homeowner, if they had a well, if they wanted to periodically have the quality of their water tested, it would be their responsibility to do that, and there's no burden on the county. Is that correct? Okay. I have a real problem with mandatory stuff, and I don't like mandates, particularly if they're not needed. And it seems to me if it ain't broken, why fix it? And we heard half a dozen or so people come up and testify and say they're drinking this water, and I don't see any of them. I'm not sure where they stand health-wise, but I don't see any green people out there. You know, I don't see anyone who looks seriously ill from dealing with the water. And while I'm empathetic to how you have to try and pay for the system, if these folks have their own water supply, and if they've had it for years, it would seem to me that they should be grandfathered in and be able to maintain and use it without having the burden of having to hook up to a system that was, it appears, instituted after they established their water supply in their home. If the system was a public health, you know, it depends at what point the county's involved, but if it was a health hazard to the people, and/or their neighbors in some way, as we often run into with septic systems that fail, I could see us wanting to step in. And then obviously, the responsibility is up to the individual homeowner to maintain that the quality is good. I have a real problem with this, and I've just too many questions in my mind. And maybe there's some answers, or there's some situation beyond this that hasn't been addressed. But unless something enlightens me, I can't see having to force people to hook up if their system, and I'll state it again, predated the water supply. And if it's fine, if it works, why do we want to force them to do it?
Commissioner, just a reminder, if you choose not to pass this today, it still applies. They're still mandated to do it. This is just clarifying that provision. So if you want to make that change, you could, but then that's something I believe you should not be making today because you haven't notified the 4 regulated utilities that you're considering this. The code provides that utilities can request a waiver, not property owners. So you need to, I would postpone that decision if that's the way you're going, and let us bring back a different ordinance once you've had those discussions.
Yeah, I'll just try and summarize how I feel. I have a real difficulty with this. There's no way I'm going to vote in favor of this today. I just can't do it. Maybe we need additional information. Maybe we have to revisit it. It doesn't appear that there's a health potential problem right here, and there's no way I can support this quote clarification unquote.
Okay, Commissioner Duffy.
Thank you. I got the first speaker. I have to say you were fantastic. You made an excellent argument, and I learned a lot from what you said. I certainly support cisterns, and I can see where in some cases mandatory connection might apply for situations where you're using underground wells, which we know is overpumping the aquifer, but you're using cisterns. There can't be any argument against that. I realize that the law, as it is right now, that's part of our comp plan, says you must hook up. I don't, in this particular case, on this island, I would be fine with changing that and going into our comp plan and changing it because in this situation, people have spent a lot of money to buy the cisterns. It's rainwater. It makes perfect. I've traveled on vacation to places like St. Thomas, St. John's, where they use cisterns everywhere. That's their water supply. So I think it makes sense. And based on the new information that I've learned today from the citizens, I couldn't vote in favor of this today. I realize it's just an amendment. It's not going to change the mandatory by enough. But I think we have to go back and get more information, see what we could do to change the mandatory, and go from there.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Constance.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. Well, I'm starting to get a feel for this, and I agree that I personally have some questions, and so rather than vote this down, I think I'll make a motion that we postpone this item until we can get further information regarding more background, because I think this is something that we probably
I'll second that.
Yeah, okay. I got a motion to second to postpone this item, amending Code Chapter 3-8, Article 2, concerning regulated utilities discussion. Ms. Knowles, I just want to confirm, and I agree with that. I mean, I think we need to get some additional background. What would be the process to look at the Barrier Islands in a different way, possibly? Because obviously, this is a code. It'd have to be a modification to the comp plan to adopt anything different. Is that correct? The comp plan requires mandatory hookup. I don't think we can adopt an ordinance that's in conflict with the comp plan.
Well, again, Ty Harris for the record. It's been in your comp plan since the original comp plan. However, I went back and looked, and when the 2050 plan was adopted, somebody took out that provision that said that it applied throughout the county. Now it just says in the urban service areas.
Interesting.
Which is very interesting because it has always been in your comprehensive plan. So Ms. Knowlton is correct. Historically, it's been in there through all the discussions that have preceded the discussion today. It has always been your comprehensive plan. Somebody, and I can't figure out how that happened. It predates me, but it was removed, so it just applies to the urban service areas. But it's still in your ordinance, and I think, without going too far afield, I think this, when you talk about your legislative priorities and how do you address barrier islands, and when does the Public Service Commission trigger that type of, commanding these types of actions, maybe that's where the real discussion lies, is with the state, and not with the things that they're commanding us to do.
Should be. I do agree, though. I think we need a little bit more discussion on this, a little bit more background to understand what's happened. Commissioner Deutsch.
On the motion, if and when this is brought up again, I think it should be incumbent upon us to make sure that everyone on the island would know if and when we're going to bring this up again, so they'll have an opportunity to share their concerns and their views.
Commissioners, I have a copy of the ad here. It is advertised in the newspaper. I'm thinking, given your direction, maybe the better thing to do is to, because we will have to, if you want us to bring this back and make some kind of change,
Table it.
we're going to have to, no, I'm thinking maybe you go ahead and deny it, so that what is in effect stays in effect, and this
That's
comes
fine with
back
me.
to you, because it's an indefinite period of time of when we're going to bring it back, and we'll have to re-advertise.
Yes,
Okay.
Chris made the original motion, so.
We have a motion and a second on the floor to postpone this item. Commissioner Truex, you have some discussion?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I've been trying to get clarity on this issue for a while. I know I've had a lot of emails from folks and a few phone calls, but mostly email conversation going. And I'm hearing something a little different than what was in my mind, that it's not in the comp plan. So in my mind, I thought it was in the comp plan. I thought I had read that. But for today's purposes, I think that we have to have further discussions about it, and I'd like to get better clarity on it. Some of the options that have been discussed today, I think we need to investigate. I know that's not something that's going to help Mr. Boyer's case, and I know that it's something that may help residents, but I think that the overall thought process is that the non-urban service area is a little bit different animal. And I want to know more about how this came out potentially. I want to know more about what our options are. I also want to know what the effect is, how it might affect future issues for us, because we're going to have to be able to deal with this very item. If we have to expand in certain areas, we're not going to be able to recoup those costs as well. So I think that the overall conversation needs to be extremely open, extremely thorough, and I won't support the current motion for that reason.
I guess, Ms. Knowlton, would you clarify again what you were just saying concerning this motion and possibly a reconsideration of a different motion?
I'm hearing two say that they didn't want to act on it today, and they may want to make a carve-out for the barrier island, and then Commissioner Truex is saying he needs more information and wants further explanation and discussion on the impacts throughout. So I'm thinking maybe the better course is just deny the ordinance, and we will bring it back when we have that information available. That way you're leaving in effect what's in there. I mean, it's been a clarification all along, so you're not really changing anything, but that will give staff an opportunity to get together, and we'll bring back a different ordinance possibly in the near future, but we have to notify the utilities so that they can be involved.
That seems clear. I'll withdraw my second.
Okay, the second is withdrawn.
So if we vote this motion down, I guess I thought once you deny an ordinance, then you can't revisit that subject for 6 months.
The same ordinance.
It would be.
This would not be the same ordinance,
If
because
it-
what you're going to be bringing back possibly is an exemption for barrier islands, if not more. So it would not be this ordinance.
But what if after, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, may I?
Go right ahead, sir.
But what if after investigation, this is where we lead back? I'm not saying one way or another. I'm just saying that we have to have the foresight to kind of identify. We don't know where we're going to end up with, I think, until we have more information. So I would prefer to table this motion. I would prefer to table the item, and I don't know to give a date specific to revisit it,
Right.
but
And that is the current motion.
The current motion is
Is to table.
Is to
to
table.
postpone indefinitely, and if you're going to make.
I misheard then, sorry,
So-
because I can support that.
Okay, so you have a second, and
Now we have a new
I'd rather
second.
keep
Yeah.
that, I'd rather keep the issue
Yeah.
open. If we never revisit it, if an alternate ordinance is brought forward, then this just stays on the table forever. It doesn't really matter, but I don't have enough information yet
That's-
to be able to kill this one until I know we have something competing or improved, or we bring it back and then we knock it out. But I just don't want to close any doors.
And
I
that's-
agree.
That's fine, Commissioners, and we'll still re-advertise.
And we have to let
Future.
people know when we bring it up again. I think that's critical.
Commissioner Duffy.
The other option we could do is take no action, and that will serve the same purpose as tabling it, really. But whatever you guys want to do is fine with me. But the other thing is, it's interesting what Mr. Harris said, that in the comp plan, it only provides for mandatory hookups in urban service areas. So that would mean that Little Gasparilla Island would be, by that language, it would be exempt. So we're onto something here, and we'll stay on it with our staff, and we'll bring it back, and as soon as we have it clarified perfectly.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to table indefinitely this ordinance amending code, Charlotte County Code, Chapter 3-8, Article 2. Any additional discussion?
Postpone indefinitely.
Postponed indefinitely.
Okay.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say no. Hearing none, it's passed unanimously.
Mr. Chairman,